welcome to Shell Point Today for Wednesday, September 16th. I'm Mary Kay Grimaldi.
And I'm Rich Nation. Thanks for joining us. On today's show, Jeff Cory of the Legacy Foundation will tell us about a new addition to the Health Connections about medical breakthroughs and discoveries. And we'll meet a resident, Judy Owen, to learn about her days of antique appraising and selling.
But first, don't forget about the opportunity to have a great time while creating your own personal masterpiece at the Painting Your Way class on Thursday in the Sable Room of the Woodlands. An artist from Vino Picasso Paint Studio will guide you step by step through a unique painting called Egret, pictured here. When completed, you can take your artwork home to hang on your wall or give as a gift to someone else. The class is from 1 till 3 p.m. and the cost is $29.
Also on Thursday, you can learn to lower your taxes and increase your income. The Legacy Foundation and the Academy of Lifelong Learning present this financial seminar at 10 a.m. in the Grand Cypress Room of the Woodlands. Presented by Rena Schlager of Schlager & Levin, you'll learn how to maximize your income in this plain-speaking session, teaching what you should know about your tax return and the tax benefits you enjoy at Shell Point.
And finally, on Thursday, you can enjoy a dinner outing to Caribbean flair, Jamaican jerk chicken and pork, fresh local seafood, island-style ribs, fresh baked pastries and other desserts round out this delicious evening on Estero Island. The cost of the trip is $7 with dinner on your own at moderate prices. Court pickups begin at 4:30 p.m. on the island. Let's talk about a new collection of Health Connection classes that are coming up this season, sponsored by the Legacy Foundation. Heather Battey visits with Jeff Cory of the Foundation to talk about these new sessions that will focus on groundbreaking technologies and the latest advances in healthcare, research, and medicine. As Jeff explains, these programs will address heart care, Alzheimer's, cancer, and more.
Hi, I'm Heather Battey with Resort Services, and today I have someone with me that you all probably know, and that is Executive Director Jeff Cory from the Legacy Foundation. Hi, Jeff. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, Heather. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we're here today to talk about a really new and exciting portion of the Health Connection. We have a new portion that's going to be called Medical Breakthroughs and Discoveries, and it is sponsored by the Legacy Foundation. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. We came up with this idea, Heather, to sort of expand programming here for residents. We know our residents are really interested in what's new and latest in medical research and technology and what's happening in healthcare. Right. And so we thought maybe it'd be a good idea to have some programs that focused on areas of interest to residents.
These are new things that would be not necessarily something that we would cover in the medical portion of the Health Connection, but this is going to be expanding, going to talk about things that are up and coming.
That's right. We have a relationship with Lee Memorial, and part of the programming will include Jim Nathan, the president of the Lee Memorial, coming out and speaking to our residents. We also have a program on heart care and Alzheimer's, and also a neat program with Mass General, sending down one of their physicians to talk about advances in melanoma and skin cancer. So.
Great.
Pretty exciting stuff.
Yes. So, for instance, in this this program that we're going to be offering, we're not going to be touching so much on what is the day-to-day stuff that's going on, but kind of what they're thinking about research-wise. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think some of it's advances in research and medicine and that sort of thing, but also in care and treatments. And our heart care program this fall will be talking about invasive surgery or minimally invasive heart surgery and what's been happening there. So, a lot of exciting things that our residents, I think, will really find neat to see what's happening.
Right. And these are going to take place at the Village Church.
That's right.
And they're open to the public?
Open to the public as well. We'd like to expand this to the public. I think it's going to be programming that residents in Lee County itself will find interesting and informative, so we wanted to open it up to everyone. So.
How would you go about signing up for these events? Is it going to be through the service desk?
It's going to be through the service desk, and we're partnering with Health Connections. We actually had a committee of residents that we brought together to help us with the programming and to find out what was of interest to Shell Point residents. So it's been a team affair, and so we appreciate your involvement as well.
Absolutely. I do think this is going to bring in a lot of residents and the public because the topics, like you said, are really interesting, I think, to residents and to their families.
Sure.
So to sign up or to know what's going on a little bit more with these programs, you're going to be looking in your new Health Connection book that comes out in the middle of September. If you have any questions, you can reach out to the Legacy Foundation or to any of the service desks. Thank you so much, and stay happy and healthy.
Also, don't forget to look in your mailbox for the schedule of these medical breakthrough classes sponsored by the Legacy Foundation.
Shell Point resident Judy Owen has led quite an interesting life, collecting things, appraising things, and selling things of worth and interest to other collectors. Judy has been an antiques appraiser for 32 years. She often conducted her own little antique road shows in Michigan, one of which led to the discovery of a previously unknown piece of art by Charles M. Russell. We were delighted to meet Judy as she told us all about the Russell painting, as well as conducting an auction that received media attention all the way from the BBC.
Well, I guess it starts in Pennsylvania, the Allentown, Pennsylvania. We lived there for 10 years, and at that time, this goes back to the 60s, it was the finest place in America to purchase antiques. And it just so happened I lived there. And it also happened that we had an auction house on the corner. And every Friday night I would see cars parked there from all over the United States, the East Coast of course in particular. And finally we ventured in there, and my husband knew it was going to be a mistake, and indeed it was. And within a year I had filled a general store, and I had filled our 4-bedroom house, basement, and garage to the brim. So my folks were living in Traverse City, Michigan at the time, and they had a pottery studio and real estate office, which I quickly converted into an antique shop. We subsequently, in 1972, moved to Traverse City. I continued to run the shop there. And at some point, the antique appraiser in Traverse City decided he wanted to retire. And when he retired, the bank trust departments were left in a lurch. They had no idea what they were going to do for setting up trusts and so forth, and estate liquidations. So they came to me, and I was very, very new and very green. I said I'd be happy to do it. And I started out, and of course, first thing I did is start by buying reference books, and I bought many, many, many reference books. Now, I'd like to talk today about 2 out of many, many, many thousands of appraisals that were done over a 30-year period, but 2 that kind of stuck out in my mind. The first happened when I was very green. I had probably only been at it a few years, probably around 1975. This is a Tiffany dragonfly lamp with a mosaic base, a bronze base set with mosaic tiles. I was doing an appraisal for his doctor and his wife, setting up a trust setup. And I had been there probably a week. It was a large home. And when I got to the bedroom, the main master bedroom, I noticed that he had on his end table a Princess telephone, which were very popular in those years. And above it was hanging this magnificent shade, a very large, beautiful stained glass shade. And I looked at it and I said, "Is that what I think it is?" And they said, "Well, it was just something we found in the basement, and it belonged to his mother, and we hung it there." The interesting thing was that they had taken it off of a large bronze gas lamp. Now, this was unusual for Tiffany, but they did do a number of gas lamps, not just electric, and the earlier ones in particular. They had gone to the dime store and they had purchased a fitting for the top of this shade, which was plastic with a brass coating painted. probably spent a couple bucks on it. And here it was hanging about a foot from the Princess telephone. And of course my thought was, here's a doctor. Back in those days you used to get calls in the middle of the night. And the doctor would pick up a phone in a hurry and crash it into the shade. And I said, if it's what I think it is, we're going to have to get it off of there immediately before something happens. So I asked her if she had any idea where the base was, and she said, oh my, no, but I'll take a look in the basement. When I came the next time, she indeed had found this magnificent base, twice the size of the one in this photograph. It was perhaps maybe 2 feet in size, bulbous, magnificent. Anyway, she decided that she would let us sell it. So I made a number of phone calls to dealers in the New York City area. And one of the dealers got very excited, and he flew right in. He bought the lamp. Now I'm talking probably around 1975. He paid $25,000 for it. He took it, we were very impressed. He got another airline ticket and an adjoining seat for the lamp and flew it back to New York. I was doing, in 2001, a number of visits to libraries all across Michigan, the small town libraries. And I was doing what I called my dog and pony show. Basically, it was an antique road show. And the following day, I got a phone call from an elderly gentleman. And he said, I was at your show yesterday. I was very impressed with your knowledge. And he said, I have had something that for the last 45 years I have wanted to know more about. He said, I've done some of my own research and I'm pretty sure it's the real thing. And I said, well, what is it? He said, well, it's a Charles Russell painting. Have you ever heard of him? And I said, oh my, yes, I know exactly who you mean. Charles Russell was a contemporary of Frederick Remington, working about the same time in the West. And he was a prolific painter. He lived basically in the Montana area at that time. This painting was found in the attic of his uncle's house next door. And it seems the story was that the lady that had owned the house prior had a boarding house in Great Falls, Montana, where Charles Russell used to stay. And this had been given to her as a gift. So we're going back to about 1895 now, as far as the painting itself. It was labeled on the back Greenhorn, and it shows a city slicker along with a huntsman with a rifle hunting deer. And one of the most exciting things about it was the label on the back. On the back was painted, this label was glued on the back, and it has the name of the paint store, which also was Art and Wallpaper and a picture framer. And I went online and I found out that there was a Charles Russell Museum. And so I sent all of this information directly to them, and they got very excited about it. And they said the most exciting thing was that label on the back, because that happened to be the framing shop in Butte, Montana, that Charles Russell sent all of his work to. And I said, well, from my research, it looks to me like a top retail value on it would be about $66,000. Now he was thrilled because he had told me he thought it might be worth $5,000. But I said, if we're going to sell this to a dealer, you're going to have to be looking at somewhere about half of that, but let me see what I can do with it. The Coeur d'Alene was going to put it in an upcoming auction. It was going to be coming up in like 3 months' time. They sent me the box to pack it up because that's what we had decided we wanted to do with it. I had it actually packed and ready to ship out, and he called me. This is the curator there at the museum and the auction house. And he said, you know what? I have a private party that would be very interested in purchasing it now, not waiting for the auction. So I called my client. He said, go ahead with it. So we sold it for $30,000. My client was extremely happy. I got my 5%. And since I had charged my client nothing, I got 5% from his as well. So I came out doing very well. So those were two of my very favorite surprise stories. First, let me tell you about what the Traverse City State Hospital was. It was at one time called an asylum. In fact, when we moved there in 1972, there was a big sign out in front, a big stone sign, and it said Traverse City Asylum. And finally decided they had to get rid of this huge white elephant. It was costing them a fortune just in taxes and so forth. They had to do something. So they talked about destroying it. In fact, I have the headlines here talking about destroying the building. Meanwhile, rather than destroy the building, friends of ours in the real estate business offered to pay the grand sum of $1 for the property, and it was accepted. Property itself has got to be worth in the multi-millions. A gorgeous, gorgeous piece of property. And he has taken this friend of ours has taken this and turned this magnificent building into condominiums. And in addition to that, they have what they call the cottages, which were a bunch of Victorian homes that are now all assisted living facilities and very beautiful ones. So they've done a magnificent job. So we set it up to do a 3-day sale. And amongst the items, along with the electroshock equipment, we had a human skeleton to sell. And when it hit the papers, it went all the way to Detroit, and the Detroit papers had a front page splash on it as well. And I had phone calls even from the BBC. I had them from everywhere. Everybody wanted the story on this. So we set it up for a 3-day sale. And the lineups of people went back in the hundreds. They drove up from as far as Detroit, which was 5 hours south. They were there at 4:30 in the morning. We opened the doors at 9. We had planned a 3-day sale, but the third morning I had to go over there and stand on the doorstep and tell everybody that had come, I'm sorry, there isn't one thing left to sell. We had stripped the place right to the doorknobs and the door hinges. So it was a fabulous sale. Well, I try to stay out of the antique shops, that's number one. And before we moved here, we liquidated everything, and I was very, very fortunate because everything we had, of course, was antique, except for our leather furniture in the living room. Everything was antique. And I knew none of it was going to fit in here. And so we were fortunate enough to have actually found a dealer in northern Florida who happened to deal in exactly the same things that I had, which was primitive Americana. So what do I do here? Well, I've gotten into art, and that's another story, but I'm loving it here. Everything about it, I tell everybody that asks about it, it's summer camp for old people. It's just like when I went to camp. I'm surprised we're not sitting around making lariats to hang around our necks. So anyway, we love it.
And now it's time to check out today's happenings, Academy news, menus, and Village Church connections.
Welcome to the Happenings segment of Shell Point TV. I'm Bev Chandley, and this is Caitlin Van Scoy, and we're going to tell you what activities we offer for you here today at Shell Point. At 7:45 this morning, we have men's Bible study in the Osprey Room on the island. 8 o'clock is the time for men's round robin doubles tennis at the Woodlands Tennis Courts. Now, Lilly & Company Jewelers will be here from 8:45 until about 11 at the Resident Activity Center. And Jurassic Travel will be here from 9 till 12, and she'll be in the egret room to help you with your personal travel needs. At 9 o'clock, we have the watercolor group with Phil Hilton in the art studio. And the card making and scrapbooking group will be in the Tarpon room at 9:15. 10 o'clock, Find Mark Investment Roundtable will be going on in the Manatee Room on the island. Also at 10 o'clock, we have the men's round robin doubles tennis at the Woodlands Tennis Courts. We have a Health Connections class at 11 o'clock today, Dementia, What Should We Do About It? That's in the Grand Cypress Room at the Woodlands. Sign up is required.
And we have a 10:15 Model Yacht Sailing Club outing down at the Woodlands Commons Lake. The Women's Ministry's Global Outreach will meet at the Hospitality Room of the Village Church at 10:15. And then at 11 o'clock, we have the Neuropathy Support Group in the Oak Room down at the Woodlands. And we have a Health Connections class at 11:30, Agility and Flexibility. That's in the Health Club, and it's currently full. That wraps up the morning. Here's Caitlin for your afternoon lineup.
Thank you, Bev. We kick off the afternoon with chess at 1 o'clock in the Library Lounge. Then we move to 1:45 for a Health Connections class, Balance and Mobility Training Level 1. That'll be in the Health Club, and that one's currently full. Come listen to Jazz and Stuff, a free concert at 2:30 in the Grand Cypress Room of the Woodlands. And at 3 o'clock, the Bible study will be in the Community Room of King's Crown. Also at 3 o'clock, a Health Connections class, Pilates Stretch in the Health Club. And then Indoor Bocce is at the Health Club at 4:30. We move to 5 o'clock. The singles table is available at the Crystal Dining Room, so go check that out. And then we move to 5:45 for a church choir rehearsal in the choir room at the Village Church. Our last activity is Prayer and Praise at the Village Church at 7:15. Well, we hope you have a great day. Thanks for joining us. See you tomorrow.
Hello, I'm Terry Kolath with your Academy information for Wednesday. At 3 o'clock, our Basics Prep School computer course will take place in the Computer Center at the Woodlands. Sign up is required. And we have many new classes I'd like to share with you for tomorrow. Tips for more organized email messaging with Jim Plummer of Lakewood. Lower your taxes, increase your income, and not outlive your assets, a legacy seminar. David Singer of Teledora begins his writing seminar. And Dr. Harriet Furton-Reese of Genonia will talk about hot literary trends.
Menus for Wednesday. In the Crystal Room, the Crystal Platter is a beef tostada with beans and Spanish rice. The soup of the day is chicken Florentine. In the Island Cafe for lunch, the special is a Western burger with onion rings for $7.75. The dinner special is grilled shrimp for $8.75. All menus are available 24 hours a day at www.shellpoint.net.
Welcome to Village Church Connections. I'm David Pavey. One of my associates, I'll call Susan, is serving God in the Middle East with her husband and children. Concerned about doing something to help some of the refugees in the region, and noticing that one of the ethnic groups seemed to receive less help than those calling themselves Christians or Muslims, she decided to focus on the Yazidis, one of the people groups displaced by war. Yazidis are a culturally distinct Kurdish religious community who practice a monotheistic religion which includes elements of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and a few other things too. Taking a gifted translator with her then, Susan made her way to a Yazidi refugee camp in Turkey, close to the Syrian border. The site used to be a park with shade trees and picnic tables, but today it is packed with grey tents provided by the local Turkish Kurdish municipality and surrounded by barbed wire to keep intruders out and the 3,000 Yazidis in. Most of the Yazidis in the camp came from Sinjar province, located in northwestern Iraq. They fled from their ancestral villages because of the vicious threat of ISIS. Yazidi men who fell into the hands of the Islamic State were summarily decapitated. The younger women captives were sold as sex slaves for the terrorists. Those people who managed to escape mainly fled north to Turkey and were given safe haven by the Kurdish municipalities of the southeastern region. Once allowed into the camp, Susan was surrounded by 40 young women in very short order. Most of the women in their late teens, all of whom had lost loved ones. They told their stories, often sobbing as they spoke. She returned the next day, and the next day after that, each time receiving a warm welcome because Susan had cared enough to visit the Yazidi refugees. While forbidden to openly share the gospel with the refugees, nobody banned praying, so Susan was able to pray for them in the name of Jesus. On the second day, the group gathered again as Susan talked to them about God and hope. She held up a ball and an egg, showing how one may feel at times like a cracked egg, spilling out its contents, never to recover them. Then holding up the ball, she told them that they could actually choose to be more like balls instead of eggs, bouncing back from pain and from trauma. On another occasion, Susan talked to them about their fears, suggesting that they try to put their fears in a box, unlock it, and give it to God, who is bigger than their fears. Another time, after Susan had talked to these young refugee Yazidi women, she passed out cookies and cake. A little boy in the group was thrilled with his piece of cake, the first time he had tasted cake in a year. Susan told him that she had a little boy about his age, and seeing the marbles in his hand, she mentioned that her son Michael liked to play with marbles too. "You can give my marbles to Michael," responded the little refugee boy. Susan thanked him profusely, though she declined his kind offer, of course, reflecting later on what a generous, unselfish spirit these people had, in spite of their misfortunes. The image of that little boy who owned nothing more than a few marbles, offering them to another little boy he'd never met, well, that touched my heart. It brought tears to my eyes. And it made me think of a short story we find in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 12, verses 41 to 44. It goes like this. Let me recite it for you. Jesus sat down near the collection box in the temple and watched as the crowds dropped in their money. Many rich people put in large amounts. Then a poor widow came and dropped in 2 small coins. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, "I tell you the truth, this poor widow has given more than all the others who are making contributions, for they gave a tiny part of their surplus. But she, poor as she is, has given everything that she had to live on." As we think about how much of our income we should give to the church, to missions, and to other worthy causes, perhaps the question we should ask ourselves is not, how much should we give, but how much should we have left when we've given? Now think about that little Yazidi refugee boy willing to give up his precious marbles. That will help us keep things in perspective. And thank you for tuning in to Village Church Connections.
Well, that's all for today's show. Thanks for watching. Be sure to tune in again tomorrow when Heather Battey talks about an important health connection class on chest pain. And technical support specialist Matt Whalen gives us a preview of an academy class for first-time computer users. This has been Shell Point Today for Wednesday, September 16th. I'm Mary Kay Grimaldi.
And I'm Rich Nation. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you again here tomorrow.